Maybe. Yes, sir!
Perfect. Welcome to the Hall of Teams. This episode for me today is personal, where we step into one of the most distinguished clubs and look into some of the most sacred earth on the planet, the Augusta National Golf Club. The weight of this episode is heavy upon me. I have been a golfer for over 50 years, and I spent much of my professional life building a global golf management software business. In the 1990s, our company had the rare distinction of receiving a call from Augusta National about our tournament software. For anyone in the game of golf, that meant something. For me, it meant even more. Over the years, playing to a single-digit handicap and earning a silver medal at the World Masters Games, I have teed it up on more than 500 courses. From Banff to Boston, from Scotland to Singapore. But among all of them, I have had the rare privilege of playing Augusta National in March of 2014. With that background, I understand in a very personal way what Augusta means to the game. That is why this episode was not easy to make. Trying to capture what Augusta is probably like asking someone who has seen heaven to describe it on earth. You hardly know where to begin, and you surely don't know where to end. But with the roars coming through the Georgia pines, the soft echoes of Amen Corner, and the memory I have of each step across the grounds mean too much. So, let's begin. First, we start with the perfect land, where the roots of Augusta were planted more than a century ago. Then we step into the vision of Jones, Roberts, and MacKenzie, as they build something special and lasting. Next comes the silent stealth operation of the Masters. We walk through the course itself, through my own round at Augusta National, where a lifelong dream becomes a living memory. After that, we face the shadows, the difficult moments that tested the limits of control. And finally, the enduring standard, where everything aligns under one purpose, one voice. And now, the story of one of the most iconic institutions in the history of sport, Augusta National. Chapter 1, The Roots of the Green. Every sport has its hallowed ground. Lambeau Field, Camp Nou, Center Court. For golf, that sacred ground is in Augusta, Georgia. Before it was the world's most exclusive golf club, before it was even the most famous nursery in the South, this land belonged to a man named Dennis Redmond. In 1854, the Irish-born plant obsessive bought the land and named it Fruitland. He anchored it by building a fortress, an experimental manor made of 2-foot-thick concrete to battle the suffocating southern heat. Today, that indestructible house still stands, and we know it as the Augusta National Clubhouse. But Redmond had only written the first chapter of the land's story. Just 4 years later, in 1858, he sold the property to a Belgian horticulturist named Louis Berkmans and his son Prosper. They transformed the ground into Fruitland Nurseries, a 365-acre operation that would become one of the most influential in the American South. From here, they introduced new ornamental plants and landscape designs that spread across the region, growing millions of peach trees, contributing to Georgia's identity as the peach state. But Fruitland did not last. In 1918, after the death of Prosper Berkmans, the nursery had lost its visionary. Leadership was gone, and the property became entangled in a complicated family inheritance. Without clear direction, the operation could not sustain itself, and one of the most important horticultural sites in the South quietly closed. What followed was uncertainty. In 1925, a Florida developer, Commodore J. Perry Stoltz, purchased the property and began construction on an ambitious 15-story resort to be called the Fleetwood. Foundations were poured, plans were in motion. Then in September 1926, the Great Miami Hurricane struck. The storm did not hit Augusta directly, but it destroyed Stoltz's financial backing based in Florida almost overnight. The project collapsed before it could rise, and once again the land was left unfinished. shaped by two different visions, both of which had failed to endure. But its story was not over. Soon, it would pass into the hands that would shape it into one of the most revered grounds in sport. Crest and Colors. The Augusta National emblem dates to the club's early years and appeared on materials for the inaugural 1934 tournament. Its most recognizable mark is the outline of the United States with a flagstick planted in Georgia. Many assume the pin marks Augusta itself, but it does not. Augusta sits on the far eastern edge of the state, while the flag is placed much closer to Atlanta. The founders were not chasing perfect geography. They were creating a stronger visual balance. That simplicity is what gives the emblem its power. The map suggests national importance. The flag in Georgia signals that Augusta is not just another club, but a destination. The colors carry the same discipline. Green defines the club, the course, and the entire visual identity. Augusta is known for its shade of green. Everything from trash cans to television scaffolding to sandwich papers. The purpose is deliberate. Anything man-made is meant to recede into the landscape. That same green became the color of the club's most famous symbol, the green jacket. First awarded to Masters champion Sam Snead in 1949, with all previous champions retroactively receiving one that same year. The yellow completes the emblem with warmth and light, echoing Augusta in the spring. Together, the emblem and colors create one of the most recognizable visual identities in sport. Chapter 2. The Founding Team. By the early 1930s, Bobby Jones had already given golf its grandest farewell. After completing the Grand Slam in 1930, he retired from championship play. At just 28 years old, the time had come to step away from competition and return to his law practice in Atlanta. The pressure of his 1930 Grand Slam had broken him physically. During tournaments, he couldn't eat. He drank whiskey to calm his nerves and lost pounds of body weight during tournaments due to stress. Jones didn't just want to build a golf course. He desperately needed a sanctuary, a private refuge where he could finally play the game he loved away from the crushing, suffocating galleries. That idea required more than vision. It required structure. Clifford Roberts provided it. They were the ultimate odd couple. Jones was the charming, beloved Southern gentleman. Roberts was a cold, calculating Wall Street financier. Roberts was willing to be disliked if it meant protecting Jones's vision. Every strict rule that Augusta National is famous for was the work of Clifford Roberts. They were introduced to the former Fruitland Nurseries property in 1931 through a mutual acquaintance, Thomas Barrett Jr. Jones walked out onto the property, standing near what is now the practice putting green, and looked down the long slope of the land. His reaction was immediate. "Perfect," he said. "And to think, this ground has been lying here all these years, waiting for someone to come along and lay a golf course upon it." For the architect, Jones turned to Dr. Alister MacKenzie, but that connection had begun earlier. At the 1929 U.S. Amateur at Pebble Beach, Jones was knocked out earlier than expected. Instead of leaving immediately, he stayed on the Monterey Peninsula, played Cypress Point before it officially opened, and met MacKenzie there. That meeting mattered. Jones saw right away that MacKenzie understood the game the same way he did, not simply as a test of punishment, but as a balance of strategy, beauty, and decision-making. Construction began in the heart of the Great Depression. Labor was plentiful, money was not. The club struggled to find its first members. They couldn't pay their contractors, and they eventually had a hard time even paying Alister MacKenzie his full design fee. Roberts had to hustle, scrape, and delay payments just to keep the gates from being chained shut. Yet while Roberts fought for the club's financial survival, the work pushed forward. To rehabilitate the overgrown nursery, he brought the grandsons of the original Fruitland founders back to Augusta. They let the land dictate the design. Fairways followed natural contours, elevation was preserved. Nothing was forced into place. As the course began to take shape, a group was formed called the Beautification Committee. Their recommendation was simple: surround each hole with a concentrated display of one distinctive variety of blooming trees or plants. Leading that committee was Henry Parsons Crowell, the founder of Quaker Oats and a passionate gardener. Working closely with Louis Berkmans, they planted more than 4,000 trees and flowering plants in the spring of 1932. Azaleas, dogwoods, honeysuckle, and magnolias, each chosen with a purpose. On January 13, 1933, Augusta National officially opened its doors. The course was ready. But tragically, the man who mapped out the masterpiece would never see its defining moment. Dr. Alister MacKenzie died in January of 1934. He passed away just 2 months before the inaugural Masters tournament was played. He left behind a canvas he would never see painted. When the first tee shot was finally struck in the spring of 1934, it marked the realization of an impossible dream. This was not the work of one man. It was the alignment of a team of three: Jones, who saw it, Roberts, who structured it, and MacKenzie, who shaped it. A team built with intention and built to make history. If you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, you can also watch this episode on YouTube with rare photos, historic match footage, and visuals that bring the story to life. And if you enjoyed the episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps the channel grow. Trivia from the Hall: the rejection that helped create the Masters. One of the great ironies in golf is that Augusta National never actually intended to create the Masters. Originally, Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts simply wanted to host the 1934 U.S. Open. But the USGA turned them down. A June championship in the suffocating heat of a Georgia summer simply wasn't practical. That single rejection changed the trajectory of the sport. One of the most iconic events in sport was born from rejection and a fallback plan. Chapter 3: The Masters' Invisible Team. During tournament week, Augusta National becomes a well-oiled machine. When all departments are accounted for, the workforce reaches into the thousands, anchored by more than 700 volunteer roles and supported by teams across security, agronomy, operations, hospitality, and logistics. At the front line are the gallery guards. These positions are invitation only, often held for decades, and passed down through families. They manage security at the entrance points, where during the tournament, phones, cameras, and any other electronic devices are strictly prohibited for the rounds played on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Cameras are allowed during the practice rounds. This culture of absolute control was established in the early years. Even the language is controlled. The word fan is not used here. It is replaced with the single term patrons. It is a deliberate choice. In our 1869 Cincinnati Red Stockings episode, we noted that the word fan comes from fanatic, a term tied to emotion and intensity. At Augusta, that identity is set aside, because here, the experience is not built on frenzy. It is built on order, restraint, and respect. Anyone who walks through those gates is a patron. It is not just a polite term. It is a behavioral contract. If you break the rules, your badge is gone forever. If you run or make an unfavorable comment to a player, you are removed. I personally saw this happen one year during the Masters at Amen Corner. A patron made an unfavorable comment to a player, and within moments, the person was identified and removed, quickly and quietly. No discussion, no debate. These same guards also oversee one of Augusta's quietest traditions, the orderly sea of green chairs, left unattended across the course for hours at a time, held in place entirely by the trust of the patrons. Again, I have experienced this firsthand. If you get there early enough, you can get some of the prime spots, and I had the front row on the par 3 12th at Amen Corner. I put it there in the morning, and it was left there untouched throughout the day. Behind the scenes, the operation only deepens. Augusta supplements its full-time grounds crew with more than 100 elite specialists during tournament week, forming one of the most respected turf operations in the world. The work begins at 3:30 in the morning. Mowers move in coordinated V formation across the property. Fairways are cut in a single direction, creating a uniform surface that appears seamless to the eye. Even failure is planned for. Each mower carries a tennis ball suspended by a string. If an operator detects a hydraulic leak in his machine or any other, the ball is thrown in front of the compromised machine. It acts as an immediate kill switch, stopping the entire operation before damage can spread. And when it does, the damaged turf is replaced with the precision and speed of a SWAT unit. At the end of the day, when the play ends, the work continues. A specialized divot repair team moves across the course after the final putt, restoring every mark with plugs from the nursery. By morning, there is no visible evidence that golf was played the day before. The greens and tee boxes are maintained to exact specifications, reinforced by the sub-air system installed in the mid-1990s. The system was invented by Marsh Benson, the golf course superintendent at the time at Augusta National. It regulates air, moisture, and firmness with remarkable precision. The sub-air system is essentially a massive underground engine capable of vacuuming thousands of gallons of water out of the greens in minutes. One morning after a torrential downpour, I was on the grounds early. Just past the Masters Pro Shop, you could hear the violent rush of water echoing up through the manholes. One superintendent said it best. Here you are not maintaining a golf course. You are maintaining a standard. Nothing is left to chance. Nothing is accidental. That same precision extends into the concessions. At Augusta, food is not designed for profit. It is designed for consistency and experience. Pimento cheese and egg salad sandwiches are $1.50. Larger items around $3. A patron can spend an entire day on the grounds for under $10. In modern sport, that is almost unheard of. But Augusta, pricing is part of the standard. Thousands of sandwiches are wrapped in specific shades of Masters green, not just for identity, but for protection. If a wrapper is carried by the wind, it blends into the turf, preserving the visual integrity for players, patrons, and television cameras. Paper cups are not used. Drinks are served in durable plastic cups, like I have here. They are resistant to wind and often kept as souvenirs. Even the cash registers are silent. No beeps, no dings, so the transaction near the ropes will never interrupt a player's backswing. Every detail is scrutinized. Every decision serves a purpose, all to ensure the most pristine experience in sport. Chapter 4: The Men Who Carry. From the first Masters in 1934 until 1982, Augusta National required every player to use the club's own local caddies. During that era, the caddy corps was made up entirely of black men, most of them from the Augusta's Sand Hills neighborhood. That policy was reinforced by co-founder and longtime chairman Clifford Roberts, who reportedly said, "As long as I'm alive, all the golfers will be white and all the caddies will be black." Augusta caddies became so respected that players would request them by name, even though assignments were tightly controlled. Two of the most notable caddies were Willie "Pappy" Stokes and Carl Jackson. Stokes caddied at Augusta for more than 50 years. He worked with multiple players, but his reputation came from consistency, judgment, and deep knowledge of the course. Over the course of his career, he was on the bag for 5 Masters victories. Carl Jackson began caddying at Augusta at the age of 14 and went on to work more than 50 Masters tournaments, one of the longest tenures in club history. His most famous moment came in 1995 when he caddied for Ben Crenshaw during Crenshaw's emotional Masters win, which came just days after the death of his mentor, Harvey Penick. The turning point for players to use their own caddies arrived not through a gradual shift, but the chaos of the 1982 tournament. A logistical debacle finally broke the club's resolve. A heavy rain delay led to a breakdown in communication, resulting in several local caddies failing to show up when play resumed. By 1983, the gates were opened and for the first time, players were officially allowed to bring their own caddies. The white caddy uniform was introduced in 1940, and the same style is still worn. Clifford Roberts wanted the course to look controlled in every detail, and that included the caddies. The white overalls made them immediately identifiable on the course and created a consistent visual standard from group to group. The caddy policy changed in 1983. What did not change was the importance of preparation and the bond between player and caddy. At Augusta, the caddy remains a critical part of the team pursuing a championship. Trivia from the Hall. What's in a name? Augusta National is arguably the most famous name in all of golf, but it almost didn't exist. When Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts were laying the foundation for their exclusive retreat, the name of the club was a heavily debated issue. They wanted a title that carried weight, but Jones, famously modest, resisted anything that sounded too grandiose. For a time, the leading choice was the Georgia National Golf Club. Other considerations included the American International Golf Club, the International Golf Club of Augusta, and the Southern National Golf Club. Ultimately, they chose to ground the club in the exact soil where it was built. They named it after the town itself, Augusta National. Chapter 5, My Round Inside the Dream. In 2014, I was invited to play a round at Augusta National. It would be March, and the scoreboards and grandstands would be up. The course would be in the final preparation stages for the Masters. We arrived at the gate at 10 a.m. for a day that would take me to every part of this historic property. I had laid out all my clothes for the day the previous evening. I was going to leave nothing to chance. I'd be wearing a cap from my club back home, the Windermere Golf and Country Club, where I was the president. The weather was going to be in the mid-60s, calm with heavy, cool air. But it could have been raining sideways, and I wouldn't have been bothered. At the gate, the guard stops our vehicle with a military presence. You give your name and the member you're with, and he checks you in with the warm, "Have a great day." I stared in awe as we began down the greatest road in golf, Magnolia Lane, where every champion has driven down before me and will after. We check in at the pro shop, where you can only enter with a member. It is professional and modest, one that you would see in any old traditional golf course. When you purchase something in this pro shop, the merchandise will say Augusta National Golf Club or ANGC, like this cup. When you buy something at the Masters Pro Shop during the Masters, all the merchandise will be logoed with the Masters. We head to the original practice range. You're introduced to the caddy. The practice balls are Titleist Pro V1s with an Augusta emblem on them and a practice stamp to the side. Pure class. Then we were off to the par 3 course. This was a surprise to be able to play this jewel that starts the Masters Week, where players enjoy some fun and relaxation before the pressure builds and roars erupt. The course is as well manicured as any course I've ever played. Every hole has its own character. If there's a more intimate and eclectic par 3 course in the world, I'm not aware of it. Then back to the clubhouse for lunch. It is not rushed. Nothing here is rushed. Time does not move the same way at Augusta National. It moves slowly and somehow too fast at the same time. And then when lunch is over, we take the famous walk to the first tee for our 1 o'clock tee time. The feeling is surreal. I still get goosebumps over 10 years later thinking about it. As I placed the ball on the tee, I said to myself, "Please, Lord, if I hit one more good shot in my life, let it be this one." I settled in, solid stance, took one last look down the fairway. I was not going to hit a safe steer job swing down this fairway. If I was going to be on the first tee of Augusta National, I was going down swinging. And I swung, full, down the line. It felt good, and it sounded solid. I looked up, and the ball was soaring down the left center of the fairway. I smiled and said to myself, "Thank you, Lord. Life is good. Let's play." And you don't ease into the round at Augusta. I found the first hole was one of the toughest on the course. I went driver, 7-iron, chip, and 3-putt. Double. That was a sign there was going to be more and more putts to come. Augusta National in its own way is not punishing. The fairways are generous. The second cut is more than fair. The bunkers are as pure and consistent as driven snow. Every approach shot to the green is challenging and exciting until you reach it. I remember hole number 5 was so steep on the green, I almost had to lean forward to walk up to the second tier. And of course I was on the top and the pin was on the bottom. Putt, chip, putt, putt. 4 shots from 15 feet. Words don't do it justice. You're not trying to make the putt. You're just trying to keep it on the green. Augusta redefined for me how important it was to be on the pro side of the hole. Many times I was above the hole within a reasonable distance for at least a certain 2-putt. But above the hole, it turned quickly into a 3, and I'm even afraid to say a 4-putt. This is a course where the greens give you nothing and take everything. As I walk the front 9, I look around in awe, knowing so many special places where players made and didn't make different shots. This was not a round of golf. This, for me, was like a walk through the Louvre. The day before we arrived, a major storm had moved through Augusta with winds of 40 miles per hour and gusts above 60. There were power outages, large trees came down, and damage was left across the area. At Augusta National, major trees had fallen across parts of the course. When we got there, the major work had already been done. The grounds crew moved like shadows in the Georgia pines. Every now and then you would catch a glimpse, a flicker of movement a fairway or 2 away. But they never came near you. They never slowed you down. The trees were removed, the ground was restored, and the sod was laid so perfectly, you couldn't tell where the damage had been. That's when I realized this place doesn't happen by accident. It is built, maintained, and protected by a team you almost never see. The member walks across to the adjoining fairway and expresses his appreciation and thanking them for their great work. There is a quiet class about everything and everyone here. At 2:45, the back 9 begins. And number 10. What a great hole. It sits sloping down before you. I imagine this is where Bobby Jones looked down over the land and thought, this is the place. And number 10 was originally going to be the number 1 hole. Get to a number 11 tee box. At Augusta National, there are only member tees and championship tees on the course. I look back and I just shake my head on how far back the championship tees are. The players have got to be so good that play the Masters and score the way they do. And then Amen Corner. There are no words. So simple. You think, how does this 150-yard hole shatter so many dreams? Walk over the Hogan Bridge, and my ball is close to where Fred Couples' ball hung up on the slope in 92. I visit the spot on 15 where Tiger chipped in. 16 where Jack made his yes sir putt in 86.
Maybe. Yes, sir!
This is so cool to stand and see what they saw in those moments. The way the green was, the way the land was. It was special. And then 18. The walk up the Hill of Champions. It's a lot steeper than it looks on TV. We finish our round in 3 hours and 30 minutes. And we took our time through every hole. That's the way golf is meant to be played. And I'm happy with the way I struck the ball. And as the 6th handicap, shoot 97. 59 shots, 44 putts, 4 penalty strokes. And that's an unprecedented, even though my friends will joke about it, that's an unprecedented number of putts for me. But this day was not about the scorecard. I soaked in every step on this hallowed ground. I breathed in the air. I felt the weight of history at every hole. You go into the members' locker room where the Green Jackets reside. Players share lockers here with their names embossed on a brass badge. We sit down and have a scotch. If there is heaven on earth for a golfer, this is it. And next to the birth of my children, Michael and Kira, this stands as one of the greatest days of my life. The day comes to a close and we head back down Magnolia Lane. As high as my expectations were for this day, they were far exceeded. And every now and then, I think back to that day with vivid memories and moments. Augusta is not a place where you remember your golf. It is a place where you remember how you felt. And I will, forever. Trivia from the Hall. When Augusta National became a farm. One of the most unusual chapters in Augusta National history came during World War II, when the club closed and the Masters was not played in 1943, 1944, or 1945. Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts understood that with the war effort consuming the country, the tournament would stop and the club itself would have to serve a different purpose. During those years, Augusta did exactly that. Parts of the property were turned into farmland. Cattle and turkeys grazed on the grounds, and the club used the land to support the wartime effort while managing significant financial pressure. It was said that the cattle damaged plantings, including azaleas, while the turkey operation proved more practical and less harmful to the grounds. For 3 springs, one of sport's most iconic stages went silent, not because the club had lost its meaning, but because the moment demanded something greater than the game itself. Chapter 6. Even Georgia pines have shadows. What follows is not separate from Augusta's story. It is part of it, and it deserves to be told with respect. Augusta National is built on control. That control created excellence, but it also created exclusion. From its founding in 1933, the club was designed to be private, selective, and insulated from the outside world. Membership was by invitation only. There was no application process, no public criteria, and no transparency. Only men were invited, only those deemed to fit the image. The number remained small, roughly 300, a figure that has barely changed in nearly a century. Members were expected to protect the club's confidentiality, to keep its operations, decisions, and internal structure out of public view. For decades, it resisted change. That reality became visible on April 10, 1975, when Lee Elder stepped onto the first tee at Augusta National. He became the first black golfer to compete in the Masters. He carried more than a scorecard. He carried the weight of a system that excluded players like him for generations. "I'm not here to prove a point. I'm here to play," he said. The moment was broadcast across the world. Yet, while Elder broke the barrier inside the ropes, the barrier inside the clubhouse stood for another 15 years. It was not until 1990, facing mounting public pressure, that Augusta National admitted its first black member, television executive Ron Townsend. Nearly 3 decades later, the pressure returned in a different form. In 2002, Martha Burke publicly challenged Augusta National's men-only membership policy and urged corporate sponsors to reconsider their ties to the Masters. The issue quickly became a national story. Sponsors were drawn into the controversy, public statements were issued, and a club long protected from the outside pressure became part of a wider debate over gender and access. Augusta answered with the same principle it always guarded: control. Chairman Hootie Johnson famously declared, "The club would not be forced into a decision at the point of a bayonet." Rather than allow corporate sponsors to be leveraged in the fight, Augusta National simply released them. The club absorbed the financial loss and broadcast the 2003 and 2004 Masters completely commercial-free. Then, in August 2012, Augusta National announced that Condoleezza Rice and Darla Moore had been invited to join as the club's first female members. There was no apology, no public reckoning, only a brief statement. The structure remained unchanged. Invitation only, private deliberation, closed process. Even beyond membership, Augusta's control extends into how it's seen. The Masters is one of the most tightly managed broadcasts in sport. Augusta National does not simply host the event, it produces it. CBS has broadcast the Masters since 1956. but it operates on a series of one-year contracts. Even language is strictly controlled. In 1966, legendary broadcaster Jack Whitaker referred to the gallery around the 18th green as a mob. Clifford Roberts immediately banned him from the broadcast for 5 years. Nearly 30 years later, in 1994, CBS analyst Gary McCord joked on the air that notoriously fast green looked bikini waxed and mentioned body bags waiting for wayward approach shots. Augusta National demanded his removal. He was permanently banned and never called another Masters. Tradition protects, but it can also exclude. Control preserves, but it can also conceal. Augusta National has evolved, but it has done so on its own terms, at its own pace, and within its own structure. That is not an accident. It is the system working exactly as it was designed. And like any great team, its legacy is not defined only by what it achieves, but by what it chooses to confront and what it chooses to protect. Chapter 7: The Enduring Standard. Augusta National was never meant to be ordinary. From the beginning, Bobby Jones and Clifford Roberts set out to build something that could outlast fashion, noise, and the shifting habits of sport itself. Not just a course, not just a tournament, a place sustained by a team committed to something greater than any single moment. That is why so much of Augusta feels different. It does not reveal everything. It does not explain itself. It does not bend easily to the outside world. In one sense, that has made it difficult. In another, it is exactly what has preserved it. But Augusta was never built to chase attention. It was built to command reverence. The Masters is the week the world sees, but beneath it is the discipline that holds it together. The quiet coordination, the shared understanding that every detail still matters. Each spring, the world arrives, not to discover it, but to return to it, to walk the same ground, to feel the same silence, to witness a standard that has been carried forward year after year by a team that understands what it represents. There are places in sport that are remembered, and there are places that define how the game is remembered. Augusta is one of those places. It is where moments become tradition, where pressure becomes history, where excellence is not celebrated once, but expected every time. And behind it, a team. Not seen, not announced, but always present. And that is why it endures. Not as a stage, but as a standard. For its place in the story of sport, and for the team that has carried that standard forward across generations, Augusta National takes its place on the Wall of Honor. Some nations play the game. Others help define it. Next time on the Hall of Teams, the Uruguayan national soccer team. In a country of just over 3 million people, on the shores of the Rio de la Plata, football is not just a sport. It is identity. It is pride. It is survival. From the earliest days of the international game to the World Cup in 1930, to moments that still echo through stadiums around the world, Uruguay has built a legacy far greater than its size. They call it Garachara, a spirit of resilience, of defiance, of never backing down. Because when Uruguay steps onto the pitch, it is never just a match. It is a nation. Next time on the Hall of Teams.